Hello everyone, it's Myung-Ko. Today I am going to read S5 5013. I wonder why Greeks built a temple. Who were the ancient Greeks? The ancient Greeks were people who lived in Greece from around 30,500 years ago. But they didn't live only in Greece. Some lived to the north and the east. In lands that we now call Bulgaria and Turkey. Others lived on small rocky islands in the Aegean Sea. Greek homeland, Greek colonies. By 500 BC, the Greek world was large, rich, and powerful. It stretched from France in the west to Turkey in the east. Why did Greece grow bigger and bigger? Greece and its homelands was small, and much of its land was too rocky for farming. By about 750 BC, there was little room left for new towns or farms, and food began to run short. Because of this, many people left Greece to look for new places to live, and the Greek world began to grow. Was Greece one big happy country? Ancient Greece was not a single country like Greece is today. It was made up of different states which were cut off from each other by high mountains, deep valleys, or the sea. The states were much bigger than cities, but they each had their own laws and army and often quarreled with each other. Athens was the biggest city-state. Where did the citizens take charge? In Athens, all grown men who owned slaves were citizens. They could choose their government officials and vote for or against new laws. Citizens could also speak at the assembly. This was a huge open-air meeting where people stood up and told the government what it should be doing. Where did the clock go drip-drop? Citizens who spoke at the assembly weren't allowed to drone on for too long. Each speaker was timed with the water clock. When the last drop of water had dripped out of the jar, his time was up. He had to sit down and hold his tongue. Who were the fiercest soldiers? The soldiers of Sparta were the fiercest army in ancient Greece. They were brave, ruthless, and very well trained. None of the men had ordinary jobs, even in peacetime. They spent their whole lives just training and fighting. Who paid for weapons and armor? Greek soldiers had to buy their own weapons and armor. A wealthy soldier bought himself a sharp spear and sword, a strong shield and expensive body armor, but poor soldiers may do with whatever he could find, and sometimes this was a little more than an animal skin and a wooden club. Why did ships have long noses? Greek warships had a long, sharp spike at the front. It was called a ram, and in battle it could be deadly. The oarsmen rowed as fast as they could towards an enemy ship and tried to smash a hole in its side with the ram. With any luck, the enemy ship would sink and its crew would all be drowned. Why was it easier to travel by sea? There are many islands in Greece and boats are often still the only way to get from one island to another. But the ancient Greeks used boats to get around the mainland too. Sailing along the coast was much quicker and easier than struggling up steep, stony tracks on the back of weary donkeys. Who was goddess of wisdom? Athena was the goddess of war and of wisdom. The Soho symbol was the wise owl. She had special powers to protect the city of Athens. Because of this, the citizens loved and worshipped her. They built Athens' very own temple, the Parthenon, high on the Acropolis, a hill overlooking the city. Who told stories about the gods. A famous poet called the Homer told many exciting stories about gods and heroes. His long poem, the Odyssey, tells the adventures of Odysseus, a Greek soldier sailing home to Ithaca from the war with Troy. The sea god Poseidon tries to sink his ship, but with Athens' protection, Odysseus finally gets home. Who took to the tree? The Greeks believed that nature goddesses called dryads lived deep in the woods. Priests and priestesses guarded the holy woods and prayed to the dryads. Then they listened hard for any rustlings in the tree, which might be the nature goddesses' messages in reply. Where did Greeks empty their wine? Many Greeks prayed to the gods in their own homes at a special altar. They liked to offer the gods presents of food or wine. Sometimes worshippers poured a whole jar of wine over the altar. More often, they drank most of the wine themselves and just gave the gods a tiny drop. Why did Greeks build temples? The Greeks built temples as homes for their gods. They made the buildings as magnificent as possible, using only the finest materials and very best craftsmen. So the gods would be pleased. Elegant statues, tall columns, and painted friezes decorated the outside. Inside, the rooms were filled with treasures, whose fingers made their fortune. Greek craftsmen were very skillful and made beautiful works of art. Stone masons carved marble figures. Metal workers made statues and vases of bronze, while potters and painters made wonderful jars and flasks. Some craftsmen became rich and famous and sold their work abroad as well as at home. When did a couple get married? Most couples got married when their parents said so. A wealthy father wanted a good match for his son or daughter. That would make the family even richer and more important. Greek brides were only 13 or 14 years old. When they got married, their husbands were usually much older, 30 at least. What did girls do all day? Young girls from wealthy families were sometimes taught to read at home, but girls didn't go to school. Most learned from their mother how to spin fleece into thread and then weave it into fine woolen cloth. The Greek women made all the cloths their families needed for wall hanging, blankets and rugs, as well as for clothes. Who went to the gym every day? Gym is short for gymnasium, the Greek name for school. Boys went to school from about the age of 7. They learned all the usual things like reading, writing, and math, as well as how to make a speech, recite poetry, and singing. Why were Greek clothes so comfy? The Greeks wore light, loose-fitting clothes. There were no tight buttons or zips, just flowing robes or simple tunics called chitons. Chitons were just big squares of cloth draped over the body and held in place by pins at the shoulders and a belt round the waist. Why were Greek shoes so bouncy? Most Greeks liked to go barefoot in the house, but when they went out, they wore cool summer sandals or warm winter boots. The comfiest ones had the thick soles made of cork. This made them soft and bouncy, just right for walking on stony ground. Who took a shower in a bowl? When the ancient Greeks wanted a shower, they stripped off and crouched inside a deep pottery bowl. Then a slave would come and pour jars of cool, refreshing water all over them. Where could you buy figs, beans, cheese, and grains? Town dwellers bought the food at the Agora, the open-air market in the center of town. There was always plenty of fresh fruit, vegetables, and grain, all grown on farms just outside town. You could also buy cheese made from goat or sheep's milk, which were flavored with sweet-smelling herbs. Why did farmers beat their trees? Before farmers harvested their olives, they spread huge sheets of cloth under the tree. They whacked the branches to make all the ripe fruit fall on the sheet. This was much quicker and easier than trying to pick the tiny olives one by one. Did the Greeks get drunk at breakfast? Certainly not. Some Greeks did drink wine at breakfast, but it was mixed with plenty of water. Most people preferred milk. Favorite breakfast food included bread, porridge, eggs, fish, or a few figs. Why did actors wear masks? In ancient Greece, only boys and men were actors. They wore masks so that the audience could see what part they were playing. A man or a woman, a wise person or a fool. Greek theaters were huge with seats for up to 17,000 people. From the back, you couldn't have seen the actors' faces, but the big colorful masks were easy to make up. How did a tortoise make music? Sad to say, a tortoise only made music when it was dead. An empty tortoise shell was used to make a lyre or a music instrument rather like a harp. Musicians fix the strings to the shell and pluck them to play a tune. Why were the Olympics held? The Olympic Games were part of a religious festival in honor of Zeus, king of the gods. Every 4 years, 20,000 people flocked to Olympia to watch athletes run, box, wrestle, and race chariot. The hardest event of all was the pentathlon. Contestants had to take part in 5 different sports: the long jump, running, wrestling, throwing the discus, and throwing the javelin. Did the winners get medals? Winning at the Olympics was a great honor, but just as it is today, but there were no medals in the ancient games. Instead, the winners got crowns made of laurel leaves, jars of olive oil, beautiful pots or vases, and pieces of wool, silk, or linen to make into clothes. Who ran the first marathon in 490 BC? The Greeks won a battle at Marathon, about 42 kilometers from Athens. A Greek soldier called the Phidippides ran all the way to Athens to tell the citizens the good news. Sadly, his marathon exhausted him, and the poor man collapsed and died. Why did doctors ask so many questions? Because doctors knew it was important to find out as much as they could about the patient. So they asked them all sorts of questions: what sort of food they ate, whether they took any exercise, and so on. People had once believed illnesses was a punishment from the god, but Greek doctors had more scientific ideas. Who had his best ideas in the bath? Archimedes was a mathematician who lived in Greece around 250 BC. One day when he was in the bath, he finally worked out a problem that had been troubling him for ages. He was so excited he jumped out of the bath, shouting, "Eureka, I got it," and ran down the street to tell his friend, who discovered that the earth is round. Greek scientists were very interested in the earth and space. In about 470 BC, a scientist called the Parmenides was watching an eclipse of the moon. He noticed the earth cast a dark, curved window on the moon, and worked out that if shadow was curved, then the earth must be round. How do we know about ancient Greece? All sorts of things that survived from ancient Greece. Not just buildings and statues, but also writings, weapons, jewelry, and coin. Historians study these things carefully. They look for clues to piece together a picture of the past, just as detectives look for clues in a case. Who copied the Greeks? About 2,000 years ago, the Romans marched into Greece. They conquered its armies and ordered its lands to their own empire, but Roman people respected the Greek and the Greek way of life. They admired Greek poetry, plays, buildings, and art. They copied many Greek ideas and used them to their own way of life. The end.